I think it's best we start off this video where I began with modelling. Ever since the beginning, I've always loved making things, usually it would be out of cardboard or stuff like that. When I rejoined the Thomas fandom in late 2019, rejoined in a way. Well, I technically joined it then because before I was just an average fan and I didn't really access the Thomas fandom. But when I rejoined it, I was amazed by all the beautiful prop replicas and models the community made. Whether it be mods of the ordinary Backman Thomas or complete prop replicas of the original models viewed in the show. I loved all of them. I was always so happy seeing all of these creations being shown off and having that sense of wonderment that I could do the same. So, eventually, I decided to start modelling of my own. I originally started out as a cardboard modeller, modelling OCs made by me and my friends. Online friends, that is. Here was the first cardboard model engine I ever made. This is Jameson, a character that I made up, who will be appearing in my series in SSR Rail Tales. Eventually, I would advance these modelling techniques significantly, and advancing on those modelling techniques to create the Jameson. And this Jameson here is my Jameson. He's a character that I made up, and this is the Jameson I'm going to use for SSR Rail Tales. It's my favourite Jameson model I've ever created, and it's the Jameson for me. I also use these techniques to make other models of OCs I have created. Here are some of them shown here. These characters will also be appearing in SSR Rail Tales. I also made some models of other people's OCs, but I don't show them out that much as they won't be appearing in SSR Rail Tales or any projects anytime soon. I wanted to take it a step further. Enter Thomas the Tank Engine modelling. Actually, I used the techniques I had learned from cardboard modelling to make cardboard models of some Thomas the Tank Engine characters. Not based on the measurements of those characters, but just my own memory. Here is the models I've made of Rusty, Class 40, and a slate drop. I was honestly really happy how these turned out. However, I wanted to take it a step further. There were so many things I wanted to do with these models. I wanted to make them a bit more I wanted to make my Thomas the Tank Engine models out of a different material, put them together differently, and as well as that have features that just have more advanced features. Enter my cardboard Renee's model. I made this in the hopes of it being much more ambiguous than it actually turned out, with having a left and right eye mechanism and fully interchangeable faces. However, it was a bust. Originally, the model's faceplate was made of cardboard, and the faces didn't stick on very well and came off. Eventually, I fixed that feature by making a plastic version of that same faceplate with my new model techniques that I learned in my more advanced modelling, which we'll get into later, so I could change the faces at will. overall the model wasn't that bad. Despite it having significant weight pulling it down at the front, I liked how it looked, and the faces looked pretty nice too. However, I knew there was more I could do in terms of the kind of projects I wanted to do for Thomas the Tank Engine model. And then I had an idea. Big. I was really happy with my cardboard models. I was very, very happy. But there was more I wanted to do. I wanted them to be made of a bit more durable material for starters, as despite the way they would, as cardboard being a pretty durable material, I wanted them to be a bit more durable, as well as being put together a bit more strongly. I also wanted to paint them up and have eye mechanisms and stuff like that. This was mainly for my Thomas the Tank Engine models and not necessarily my original characters, although looking back now, I do kind of want to update it and more stronger versions of those models of those characters, using all the modelling techniques I've learnt. But I'm happy how they are right now, and that's how they're gonna stay for years to come. However, I always wanted to make more advanced versions of my Thomas the Tank Engine models, which had eye mechanisms, motors, etc. So one day I was on the internet, and then I found something beautiful. A Twitter user by the name of tdoc41 showcases work in progress Duncan model, and it gave me some insight about how to model. It looks beautiful. It was made of brass, had motors, and there was going to be an eye mechanism. However, I can only learn so much from this. So ever since then, I gathered research of how the Thomas the Tank Engine models were made in the model series, using behind the scene pages and of those characters on the Thomas wiki and crew member interviews. As well as that, I studied techniques of modelling used by other Thomas the Tank Engine modelers and modelers in general, such as how to make eye mechanism, and what kind of glue they used, etc. I wanted a material that wasn't too hard to cut out, but was still very strong. Eventually, I settled on styrene plastic, a material that was cuttable, but still strong. And for the glue, well, I settled on a plastic welding glue called poly cement, which is not only strong, which welded plastic together, but also welded other materials together, just not as strong as plastic, and was really strong. Although I do want to say, when using poly cement, please follow the safety guides. It's very important to do, and yeah. It does contain fumes, so when using it, do it outside or have windows open. Thank you. So eventually, I decided I wanted to make a proper replica of Duncan the Navigator. I made a cardboard mock-up of what it would look like using plastic tubs and a bit of cardboard. It looks pretty good. I was hoping this to be a bit more ambiguous, but it still looked very nice nonetheless. So with that all out of the way, I knew what I wanted to do. And I did it. With the modelling techniques I learned, I made a fully functional replica with a small-scale Duncan from Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. And I have to say, he looked beautiful. It was exactly what I envisioned him to be. A fully functional eye mechanism, motor and more. It was very durable as well and was painted up. So I might as well talk about how I made the model. I cut out acrylic plastic sheets as well as using other parts such as an acrylic tube for the boiler, an earthen baking clay for the funnel, dome and buffers and face. The face was held on with blue tack load to the faceplate. I polymerized it all together and voila, that was his body shell. The cylinders are also made out of earthen baking clay. With that done, I painted him up in the acrylic paint. The acrylic paint I used was cadmium yellow for the yellow parts, and normal acrylic black paint for the black parts, cadmium red for the red parts, a grey I mixed for the grey parts, brown for one of the domes, and a brown and a different shade of yellow for the other dome. I was so happy how it turned out. Time for the chassis. I was originally planning on scratch building the chassis, using motors, cogs and earthen baking clay wheels. You already know how I probably made this, and you are correct. That was how I made this. However, it didn't go as planned. The motor didn't work well. The wires snapped, and the wheels didn't move properly, and it was just a bus. So I eventually scrapped that idea. Think about what I could use for the chassis. Then I came across a user by the name of Arlo's Trains, who also made models. He used LEGO Functions train motors for his narrow gauge models. Please check him out if you haven't already. These LEGO Functions train motors are powered by a battery pack using wires. A little wire thing at the top. They're motorized and they run really fast. So I decided to use it. I received the motor and it was awesome. The type of track I bought was Lemmings track. It didn't fit on there, but I didn't mind. I had to do some modifications into it though. I stretched out the wheels to the top of the axle, as otherwise it would jam. So he probably doesn't run on Lego track as a result. I theorise he might run on gauge 1 track or something like that. We'll just have to wait and see. I then drilled holes in the wheels, adding side rods. Odds which were also made out of styrene plastic and were screwed on to the wheels. I polycemented the chassis onto the model, then painted it with acrylic paint and covered it with varnish. I added some supports at the back to make it just look nicer. These were put together using the same method and painted in the same method and coated in the same method. I left a little hole in the back for the wires to come out, as the servo wires came out from the cab, but the wires for the chassis would come out from the bottom. I then assembled the valve gear, and then Duncan was done. He ran really fast and well, and he was everything I envisioned him to be. He was just perfect. And the best part about this Duncan is, he can also free roll. It's hard to demonstrate, but he can. He had everything I wanted him to have. However, sadly, his chassis in the end broke. So he doesn't run anymore. I will eventually repair this, but for the time being, I'm happy how he is. He doesn't have to be motorised at this current point in time. However, I also needed something else. Where was I to hide the battery box? Well, I made a narrow gauge van to hide it in. This isn't really based on a van from the television series per se, nor the railway series. It's just my own little narrow gauge van. The coupling is designed to work with Lego chains, into which cups up the hooks to the two, and this van has quite a plethora of features. He has a face, as you can see, which is removable. There's a hole in here, so the wires can go from Duncan into the van. And the best part is, his roof is removable. It's held on with a bit of blue tack, and as you can see, here's the battery box for Duncan. Now this is my only current Lego battery box I own, and it works great. I have to use this for all of my models, but I don't mind. So with that, Duncan was completely done. Duncan was done, as well as the van. The van was made in the same method as I made Duncan, however with some minor differences, i.e. the wheels weren't motorised and just normal Lego train wheels, not a Lego Functions motorised train chassis. However, with this knowledge I gained, I wanted to take this chance to revive some projects that I just couldn't do. Enter my large-scale Rheneas prop replica. This was something I wanted to do for years, and I mean years, but I just never got round to. I wanted to base him on his season 12 appearance, where he has a darker red livery, which I really like. Large-scale Rheneas prop replica. This was a project I wanted to do for years, but I just never got round to. So using the techniques I learned by making my small-scale Duncan replica, I decided to revive this project. Now, if you didn't know already, my Duncan model is based on the measurements of the small-scale model from Thomas the Tank and Friends of Duncan in the original model series. Same thing with how he looks as well. So Duncan was based on this small-scale Duncan model, measurements, looks, etc. But Rheneas just didn't have any measurements available online, mainly because one, no behind-the-scenes images of the large-scale Rheneas measurements have surfaced, and two, the model is currently on display in Haramada Railway Museum, Japan, which is a very great feat, but that means it's pretty much impossible to get any measurements of him because he's on display. So we had to figure it out on my own. So using reference photos of a large-scale van of the same scale, which is now owned by Twitter user Thomas Tank Merch, and knowledge of what scale the models were originally in, and as well as reference photos of him next to other models which did have measurements, I figured out the measurements on my own, or a rough estimate of sorts. Now, there's not much to say about how I constructed him, as it's pretty much the same as Duncan. But there are some differences. First up, the servos are in the boiler, not in the cab, as it's a bigger scale. Second, and while the nameplate and number plates are still made of paper, I made them myself, as my colour printer was broken. And thirdly, his chassis is a custom build. Now, it is made using Lego parts. I didn't use my already existing Lego parts that I have, which I just ordered some new ones off eBay. As well as that, I used Lego wheels. And some styrene plastic supports to cover up some empty hollow spaces. Yeah, as a Lego Functions normal tray mode would look too small. So I had to build my own using Lego parts. The model is powered by a Lego Functions M motor, which powers the gearbox. Only the back wheels are motorised, not the front wheels, so he doesn't have much power as the small South Duncan replica I made over there does, but he still has a lot of power. He also has a left and right iMech, like Duncan. His left and right iMech is also powered in the same way. Servos and the method of the left and right iMech is the same. Not really much else to say for Rheneas, really. But now that I finished Rheneas, as well as some other things that I wanted to do but couldn't, which I finally did, like my 00 model of 2006. We'll probably talk about that another day. What could I do, well, now? Definitely not going to stop modelling, but I didn't know what to do. However, then it hit me. So one day while I was walking in the park, I had an idea to make a Percy model. Not based on the prop, despite being based on the prop measurement-wise, but as well as that having my own appearance and a different appearance to that of the prop. I wanted a darker green livery that Tommy King did on his customation of a Bachmann G-scale Percy. So, with that, all the modelling techniques I learned, I decided to take this project underway. Now, there's not much else to say for Percy that I haven't said about Rheneas and Duncan. I love the model very much. I think it's perfect and beautiful. I think my Rheneas and Duncan models and my narrow gauge van are perfect and beautiful. But in terms of how I built him, it's pretty much the same. He uses the same Lego Functions tray motor design that Duncan does. They're not the same chassis, of course. They're just the same brand and the same type. He's powered in the same way as well. However, there are some minor differences. First up, he doesn't have an eye mechanism. He just has static eyes. This is mainly due to the boiler being a different shape, and I wasn't sure how I could get the iMech done. I'll probably do the iMech eventually, but for now I'm just going to leave him with static iMech. As well as that, he doesn't have lamp irons like the original prop. And he's missing his whistle. I'll probably add his whistle eventually though. Face. This wasn't the original face I made for Percy. Nope, the original was this. I sculpted him a while ago. And, well, I sculpted this face a while back when I was working on Percy. And I didn't really like it. It didn't look Percy-esque to me. So I decided to make a new face. And this one looked Percy-esque. I still like this face. I just don't think it looked Percy-esque to me. This, I think, is a perfect face for Percy. And with that out of the way, Percy was done. And I thought it looked beautiful and perfect. So that was all my models. I'm so happy I got to share these with you all now. After ages of just being able to show you them on Scratch. I wanted to show you them in more detail, if you know what I mean. Now, if you're thinking, well, what now, Jameson? What are you going to make next? Well, I plan to make a Sir Handel model. If you see my other video, you may have seen it, you may have not. I am working on a Sir Handel model based on the small scale model. It is a Sir Handel prop replica I'm working on. Not just an ordinary model, a Sir Handel prop replica like my Rheneas and Duncan models. Rheneas and Duncan prop replicas, sorry. You can call them models, prop replicas, I don't know. Whereas Percy was just more his own thing, despite being based on the original prop measurements. So Handel's still in the same state as I showed you him before, but I will get back to working on him more soon. Anyway, that's really all. I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly did. And I hope to see you again for more modelling videos. Please make sure to check out my other videos if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now. So with the modelling techniques I learned, I made a fully accurate prop replica of Duncan's small scale model from Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. And I loved it. It had everything I envisioned. The paint, and the protective coat of varnish, protecting it from just being scraped off with my nails. And a fully functional chassis and eye mechanism. It was genuinely beautiful. So with that out of the way, I think it's good that I tell him how I built Duncan. It originally started as any modelling would in the storyboard stage and an envisionment. This is how I built my Duncan and yeah. I originally started using styrofoam plastic sheets. It was something very strong and the perfect thing I wanted to use for my model. So I cut the plastic sheets out to size, poly cemented it together, and then, hey presto, I made the body shell for Duncan. For other parts, like its funnel, dome, coal load, and boiler, and buffers, other materials were used. An acrylic tube was made for the boiler, while oven baking clay was used for the funnel and dome. The coal load are 16mm bulldog pellets poly cemented together. The buffers are also oven baking clay. All of it was put together with pump roll poly cement. The face was also made with oven baking clay. And it's held in place to the faceplate with blue tack. After poly cementing it all together, I painted it up. The paint I used was cadmium yellow for the most of it. I then used black acrylic paint. After painting them all up, I coated them in varnish. This varnish I use for everything. It's brilliant. I use it for all my models and it's just beautiful. I also made a made the nameplates and numbers as out of paper. They're printed off on my printer and designed in Scratch. They were polycemented onto the body, then coated with varnish. After that, I lined him with black pinstriping tape, and then it was time to go for the eye mechanism. The eye mechanism consists of 2 rods on a faceplate with 2 oven baking clay eyes in between. These are also painted with acrylic paint and coated with varnish. They're attached. They have both eyes have 2 rods on the back, and they're also attached to 2 rods, so they can move left and right. A plate connects both of them, so when you move that plate, both eyes move left and right. The faceplate is screwed onto the body using screws. There are 2 holes in which you could screw on the faceplate too. You already know how I put it, the holes on. And you know how I painted them as well. After that, the plate has a rod which connects to 2 servos in the cab. I was hoping to have a left, right and up and down eye mechanism, but I just settled on left and right. So when the servo moves, the eyes move left and right. I do have a controller and I would demonstrate, but I don't have any batteries to power it, so oof. The face was then blue tacked on with blue tack, and I already said how I designed it. Next was the chassis. For what I could use for the chassis, I was planning on scratch building it. However, that didn't go as planned. I attempted to scratch build a chassis using motors and cogs for the wheels. It didn't go well though. The motors were very poorly manufactured and snapped, and the wheels didn't move properly. So I eventually scrapped that idea. The time for the chassis. Enter my large-scale Rheneas prop replica. This was something I wanted to do for years, and I mean years. However, I just couldn't get round to. Using the modelling techniques I learned from making my small-scale Duncan prop replica, which, if you didn't realise already, was based on the actual small-scale model of Duncan from Thomas the Tank and Friends, using the exact same measurements of the original model, I found reference photos of the original small-scale Duncan model from Thomas the Tank and Friends online, and they were behind-the-scenes pictures of filming the season which the model was used in, i.e. which is season 4. He was also used in season 5, but alongside the large-scale model, which basically then replaced the small-scale model after that. So any other Duncan appearances in the model series would be using the large-scale model. Rheneas was based on the large-scale Rheneas model, not its small-scale one. There's no current images of the large-scale Rheneas measurements, and mainly because 1, the model is on display in Horror Model Railway Museum, Japan, so it can't end up in the collection of private collectors, and 2, no behind-the-scenes pictures of the large-scale Rheneas model have surfaced online. And when I mean that, I mean like behind-the-scenes measurement pictures. So I had to figure it out on my own. So using measurements of a large-scale van of the same scale, which is now owned by Twitter user Thomas Tank Merch, the model is powered using a LEGO Functions M motor, which is powering the face. This wasn't the original face. Nope. This was the right Percy face. When working on Jameson Duncan, when I made the faces, they just became right the first time. They were the perfect faces for my models. Percy needed some modifications, because this face is not the right thing for Percy, in my opinion. Though, I still really like it. I'll probably not use it that often. I might use it here and there. I still like it. I just think this one just looks more Percy-esque. It looks like the perfect face for my Percy model. Now, of course, when I say all these things, it's my opinion. You can have your own opinion on my models, and I have shown them off before, and some people do give advice on how to improve. And I do appreciate that. It is your opinion after all, but if I think they're perfect and beautiful, I'm just going to keep feeling that way, honestly. But I do appreciate feedback on my models. Also, you're all entitled to your own opinion, and I do appreciate it. However, don't criticise my models for the sake of criticising them. Like, don't toxically criticise my... That was my models. I'm very happy how these all turned out. They all look beautiful and amazing and perfect, in my opinion. And I'm so happy I get to share these with you in much more detail than just on Scratch projects. Because it's very limited, you know? I really hope you enjoyed seeing all my models, and I'm so happy that I got to share them with you all. But my main question when I finished Percy was, what now? I revived old projects. I did ones I had on my mind. But I'm happy to say this is not the end of my modelling. If you've seen some of my other videos, you may know that I'm working on a Sir Handel model. He's still in the same state as I showed him last time, as of making this video, but I will get back to working on him more soon. And after that, I'm going to make a narrow gauge truck model, and I plan to make a Pilot Gordon model. So, that's really all, really. I'm so happy I got to share with you